G'day, Jim Hart here. Excuse me, still a Cold War going on here, like in my body. And so I have a comment response today from the podcast episode I put up to the channel. Borderline deficits, 7 signs you are relating to somebody with borderline personality disorder. Because many people aren't sure, don't know, all the different iterations of things. Whoops, I almost hit play. That's not what we want to do. So yeah, a commenter says, I just want to share a quote that my BPD loved one said to me in a nice and normal, friendly moment. Well, can I just point out that to truly understand BPD, there can be nice moments, but they can't be, quote, normal moments. And then what's normal anyway? And what's a, quote, normal moment for a codependent versus somebody who's not codependent? What's a normal moment for somebody with BPD versus what's not normal for you? So you know what I mean? Anyway, I don't mean to be going on too much about one thing here, but there's no normal, I don't think, in humanity anymore, really. But anyway, so in a nice normal moment, a friendly moment, okay. The commenter says, when we were having a conversation, so this is where this quote that the commenter is going to share comes from. It wasn't directed at me, and it was just a general comment. But the commenter feels that what their ex with BPD or the person they're still with, I'm not sure if they're exes or not yet, exes or not. The commenter said, the BPD person said, sorry for the wire thing there. BPD person said, quote, my philosophy is I stay away from everything I love because the things I interact with either ruin everything or hate me, unquote. Come back to that in a minute. So the commenter says it's sentences like this that make us feel such empathy for them that they can't even sense that something is off about the way they perceive the world, and yet they don't know how to change it, and they're often not even willing to try. Okay, so there's a lot here to unpack in this comment in general. So a sentence like that, when the person with BPD was sharing what they said was their philosophy, this commenter says makes us, meaning a lot of you out there, largely with codependency, makes a lot of you out there feel such empathy for them. It might be the case earlier on in relationships, might even be the case up until a ghosting, discard, breakup, or what have you. However it ends or pretends to end but doesn't end exactly. The point I really want to make here is, like I've said in videos before, nobody makes you feel anything. Nobody makes me feel anything. And we use this general parlance in a way that isn't helpful to people's emotional understanding and everyone in general's emotional maturity or maturation process, or more to the point, still needed personal growth and healing to adult more fully. That's people with codependency, people generally speaking, and more to the point, people with BPD or NPD who may never get there because it's a much steeper hill for them to climb. So this idea that when a person with BPD says what this commenter's person with BPD said, that's what, quote, makes us feel so much empathy for them, unquote. I hope this chair doesn't dump me back here, because I'm going to be changing chairs soon, just waiting on something. And this, because, yes, reclining it because, and obvious, but it's not working. Sorry. So, they don't make you feel the empathy that you end up feeling for them. That is something that you're experiencing that you need to know more about from inside of yourself. Where's that coming from? Because you're externalizing out something. And it's not exactly the same as the projection of the borderline, but let's remember the similarities and overlaps between BPD and codependency, but that's not me saying they're the same thing by any means. So before I go any further, excuse me, or lose my voice, or the chair dumps me, whatever might happen first, before I finish, is quote, So the person with BPD, let's go back to that quote. They said, my philosophy is I stay away from everything I love. Okay, well, first of all, that's somebody with BPD expressing that there are things, everything, right? Things that they love. Then the question has to be asked and really kind of like dissected, if you will, as to what do they mean when they say, I stay away from everything I love. What do they really love? What does that really mean to them when a person with BPD who isn't that consciously aware of themselves or lack of self, more to the point, what does that really mean? Okay, so there's the meaning that most people with codependency will ascribe to that. And then there's the meaning that a lot of other people generally might ascribe to just hearing the word love and what they think love is. So again, how much are you externalizing and reading into what the borderline is really saying versus what is the borderline really talking about or meaning with this comment, right? And then they said, because the things I interact with either ruin everything or hate me. So this person said the things that they interact with either ruin them or hate them. Now this does play right into my narrative of explaining these things, but the use of the word things and everything I love. I stay away from everything I love, this commenter's person with BPD said. And the things I interact with either ruin everything or hate me. The use of the word things instead of people is important here. It's not just semantics. People with BPD, without realizing it, do experience other people as a type of a thing. That's the object other relational dilemma that they're stuck in, not knowing the difference between self or other, self and other. So it's a statement about their philosophy based on their experience and likely because of the pain they're in and what they're feeling, but they don't understand where that's coming from or why that is. And remember, when a person with BPD says this, like, I stay away from everything I love, really we have to put a lot, like I'm going to repeat myself here, like intentionally at least, we're going to put a lot of emphasis on this. Person with BPD says, I stay away from everything I love. How do we quantify what they actually mean by love? And if we were to really be able to ask that person, what would they say? Would they engage the conversation? How quickly would they get triggered? How fast would they get defensive and need to get out of that conversation? And what does that really mean about what people with BPD know or feel or mean when they use the word love? Okay, I'm going to say this once more too. The commenter's person with BPD also, the quote said, because the things I interact with, this is not just like, it's like a Freudian slip, if you will. It's revealing a truth about how people with BPD unconsciously do relate to other as thing, object other, to re-experience past, unconsciously through, or to experience some sense of self and identity through. And then the rest of the comment again, the reason the person with BPD is saying this, they say, because the things I interact with ruin everything or hate me. Okay, so keep that in mind again. And now let's hear the commenter's take on this, because you may well relate to what the commenter says. The only reason that, and the commenter says, the only reason that an argument didn't ensue after this comment was because I just ignored the comment and changed the subject, and thankfully we were able to just have a normal conversation. Again, there's that word normal. And what I'm hearing from this commenter, please don't take this personally, commenter, this is just a general theme of a lot of people with codependency, and it's not conscious, right? Is that sense that the only reason there wasn't an argument is because the codependent did something to make sure there wasn't an argument, which that might have some validity to the situation. But it's where a lot of people with codependency tend to think, I'm not saying the commenter does, that this is the altruism in codependency, which is non-existent in codependency. Can I just make that clear? You're not altruistic. You're not doing something wonderful. If you manage to do something, the person with BPD still has to be in a cooperative moment for there not to have been an argument. That's not a one-sided proposition. And then the commenter said, that's when the walking on eggshells kicks in. But there's a choice made there by this commenter with codependency, that if you feel like you have to do or say something, and that what you do or say will or will not prevent a person with BPD from being triggered or getting emotional or erupting or walking away or getting emotionally dysregulated or not, or being able to continue the conversation, then that intimates that one might believe unconsciously, at least, that they have control over this person with BPD. And I would suggest that that's really where the eggshells a long time ago come in for people. Commenter says they see everything through the lens of victimhood, and the person cannot see what they often create. Person cannot see that they often create their own hell and their own drama. No, sorry. They don't create their own hell, and they don't create their own drama. They are responsible for the hell and the drama that they will then project out onto you and blame you for. They're responsible for that, but they don't create their own hell and drama. They are living constantly repetition, compulsion cycles unconsciously of re-experiencing primal core trauma. And that means they didn't create it. So BPD effectively happens for people. The lack of attachment trauma, abandonment trauma, it happens. And some might even say that in a way that we don't have evidence or proof for yet, that the nature part of the nature-nurture argument or combination of what creates BPD might start in the womb with what is it about what neuroscience suggests about a developing human in utero and the effect of mother's hormones and or stress levels and or activities on the developing fetus, and how that can lead to the creation of a really highly sensitive temperament that's going to be an issue whether mom can be attuned and whether there can be this attunement and affect synchrony between mom and infant or not. So that's just another aspect of how deep this really goes. So no, people with BPD did not create their own hell or drama or chaos or self-fulfilling, self-defeating patterns or prophecies. They have to take responsibility. They need to get into treatment to understand all this, but they did not create it. We're not going to blame an infant or a 1-year-old for what a parent failed them at in 87% of the cases of BPD. That's just not here, not on my watch anyways. It's my, So again, remember that the end of that comment from the person with BPD was, because things I interact with either ruin everything or hate me. So this commenter says, victim mentality. Well, I'm not here to say no, but I'm here to say victim mentality, unfortunately, for a reason that wasn't the person with BPD's fault, wasn't the child's fault, is now the adult with BPD's responsibility to get into treatment to be able to do something about all their pain and how it affects others. So, is this because the things I interact with ruin everything or hate me? Is that a victim statement? Stating it without blaming anybody, not so much, but in a way, yes. But what? Are we shocked at people with BPD who've been largely victimized in childhood, or who have the perceived abandonment and attachment trauma that, was from a good, caring mom, but for some reason that happens? Well, are we going to say that, that means that they created this? And are you really expecting that they're going to have your repertoire of emotional, people with codependency have somewhat, not really stunted, but less than broadest or healthiest emotional landscapes of their own, but not to the degree of, people with BPD, which that is arrested emotional development and very different. But so if you're looking at, well, they're always the victim, they always have to be the victim. Yeah, they do. And guess what? They didn't create that, and that's not their fault. But yes, in adulthood, it becomes their responsibility. And if you know that, why are you still trying to make that relationship work? And if you know that, why do you want your ex back? Oh, by the way, I've been seeing a lot of things online, so I'll just interject here quickly. You can think of me depending where you're at. You can think of me as a BPD breakup coach or a breakup coach, because people out there calling themselves breakup coaches, and maybe more generally, that's fine. I have nothing to do with more generally. I'm in this area of cluster B specifically. And so, yeah, I'm here as like a breakup coach as well, because what does that mean? Well, I'm not going to keep telling you how to get your ex back, like the breakup coaches tell you how to get your ex back, whether they're BPD, NPD, or just not maybe. What we really need to address here, ladies and gentlemen, is the codependent inability to let go. Not always after the fact of what the borderline did or the narcissist did. Then, as all of you want your person with BPD to take responsibility for their behavior and for how they hurt you, fair enough. But you all need to take responsibility for that everything that you're feeling right now and why the relationship broke up just isn't your fault. And what are you externalizing? Why do you feel guilty? And why are you blaming yourself? And why do you want them back when you're recognizing that they're very flawed? They're really wounded people. Wounded people hurt people. And you can't change this. So why are you so invested in wanting your ex back, borderline ex back? Why are you still hanging around? Because you don't know how to get out. Well, let's not forget the codependent dynamic of the toxic dance of the trauma bond. This is not just a one-party situation. You're not in the relationship with a borderline as a codependent because it's all about the borderline. No, not really. But I'm not trying to minimize in any way anything that the borderline has done to anybody that traumatized you, wounded you, and also probably triggered more of your family of origin issues and what created your codependency in the first place as well. And so, where was I in the comment? It's not the shortest of comments. So this sentence completely blames whoever this person, quote, loves, unquote. Okay, wait a minute. Let's go back. The person said, my philosophy is I stay away from everything I love because the things I interact with either ruin everything or hate me. Now, the commenter who is listening to the comment from the person with BPD says, the sentence completely blames whoever the person, quote, loves, unquote. Not directly, but potentially, will that be the way that it turns out? Yeah. But is that a direct thing? I don't know. Does that matter? Let me know what you think. And it doesn't matter what they were talking about at the time. The perception is victimhood. Okay, whose perception here are we talking about right now? The person with BPD who made that statement only? Or the person with codependency who listened to that statement and is perceiving through their own lens of codependent perception and externalizing out of their own victimhood at the same time that perhaps they are perceiving victimhood from the person with BPD. I'm going to be getting into a lot more of this if anybody cares to hear it, because this is a lot of the problem. So people need to realize a lot of this, because it's not just all about the borderline or the narcissist. It might be largely, and they do, really hurtful, wounding things to people without a doubt. Anyway, so the perception is victimhood claims the codependent, who might not be aware of their own victimhood when they make that claim. Whether it is correct or incorrect, or somewhere in the middle. Is there any middle in this? Is there any gray in any of this? And so the commenter says, if anybody was around this person or anybody else, wait a minute, if it's celebrity or anybody else this person loves ruins the relationship or ends up having negative feelings towards this person, it can in no way be because of the way that they behaved or treated the other person on the other end of the relationship. Well, there is that blind spot for sure with people with BPD untreated, right? Or if they're not even diagnosed, but they have all these patterns. Definitely, there is that blind spot. And people can be victimized by people with BPD. And people with codependency can be victimizers as well as victims as well. And I'm not saying to the same degree as borderlines, okay? I'm not saying that. And the commenter says, I saved the sentence because it really made clear to me just how the world is to them. Commenter, I beg to differ. No, it didn't. You know, I hear that you feel that way and I want to respect that, but no, it didn't. Because I might follow this up with several things, but they might end up being at ajmahari.com in the online store, which I'm going to be adding ebooks and other things to coming up soon. Because, so the commenter said, I saved the sentence because it really made clear to me just how the world is to them and how their perception is so clouded by victimhood that they can't even see beyond themselves. Well, yes, that statement has some truth to it. But I would challenge this, gently challenge this commenter and anybody else with codependency who relates to this or has experienced somebody with BPD and you've been victimized by them, which I don't doubt, and they victimize out of their own victimization, actually. And then people with codependency stay there through iterations and iterations and iterations of that victimization because of your own victimization in childhood. So there's where there's that dance of trauma-bonded toxicity that isn't going all one way. I'm not comparing borderline toxicity to codependent toxicity in the trauma bond, but there's a dynamic happening there that takes both people. Let me put it that way. And I don't think that sentence, to this commenter, okay, I hear your experience, but it does not make clear what BPD is, or what that victimhood is, or what that perspective is at all. So if people are interested, leave a comment. If I don't hear from people, I won't do it, okay? Or I'll do it and I'll charge for it. I won't do it here for free. I can explain in depth why I'm taking this stance with this comment. Because this is how people with codependency, you really think that you understand BPD. You really do, don't you? And you strive for it, and you waste time, and you avoid your own pain, and you abandon yourself. You keep beating the crap out of yourself, and you can't move on, and you can't, because you won't do this, and you won't do that, and people won't look at the change and get into the healing processes they need to get into. Why? Because in codependency, one of the most fundamental things is you just keep externalizing it all onto that other person. Because that's your repetition compulsion cycle to get into therapy and to work out. Or just, if I resonate with you, I'm here to work with you. But as whatever, your breakup coach, your coach, it doesn't matter to me. Anyway, this might be really offensive to people. I don't mean to be that way. So they can't see beyond themselves, yes. Is their perception, people with BPD, is their perception clouded? Yes. And is it clouded by victimization or victimhood? Often. So often also is the perception of the codependent clouded by their own victimization and clouded by that externalized out, why do you keep pursuing a borderline that's abusing the crap out of you? And the answer to that lies in your unconscious and in the reenactment of what you're doing as a codependent, that you've even wired in your brain literally as a codependent, that love and abuse are fused together, and that the more abuse that you get unconsciously, the more you're going to pursue this cluster B because of what you don't know about your childhood woundedness and what you need to heal. So I'm not trying to say anything about minimizing what people with BPD do or where they're coming from, except that you don't really understand it. And what's the claim I'm making here? Not one I want to. I was labeled with BPD. I went through a lot of the experience of it, but I had maybe 4 strong traits, maybe 5, I don't know. They didn't assess me. But I healed and recovered from that. And so I'm here to give, and hundreds of videos on my channel, give inside out information and understanding at core depth about BPD. And people seem to like those videos a lot, but people don't seem to enjoy when I bring it out of that lens and say, hey, codependence over here, guess what? This is on your plate over here, in spite of all this at the borderline put on your plate over here, right? And what have you contributed to their plate? Obviously, people love them, try to help them, support them, none of which they can accept or take in. But you're also enabling, and you get in between them and their bottoms, and you end up trying to rescue and fix and change them. And all of this matters too, to the suffering after the fact. and to why people want to recycle these relationships. So what I'm going to do, if you want to hear more about it, is share more, like I'm always sharing, about from the inside out. It's also, education, etc., because I didn't experience everything that everybody with BPD experiences when I had BPD, because I didn't have it that severely. I was fortunate that way, but still, that was formidable to work on, to heal, to recover. I've been through that process, and I know what it means, and I know what it is, and I know where I started, and I know why now. I didn't when I was going through it. So what I'm here to say is, if you really want to understand BPD better, let me know in the comments, and what does that mean for you and why? Okay? That's my challenge to you today. So please don't make the assumption, like the commenter here, that sentence that this person with BPD said, that he understands it as deeply as he thinks he does, because he doesn't, because none of you do. Why do I make that assertion? Because unless you've had BPD, you will never understand it to the core. You will never get the emotions. You can intellectually understand a lot about it, but you will never know why they're doing what they're doing. This is something that I feel like I need to say a whole lot more about now. Not in the defense of people with BPD, but maybe to try to wake up more people with codependency. I don't know. Am I trying too hard? Let me know what you think. So the commenter said it was such a sweeping generalization that every person that they love in any capacity, whether it's business, friend, or family, or romantic, person doesn't even seem to have perceived and taken in that they were talking about everything they love, they stay away from. And everything they love either gets ruined or hates them. Thing. Not person, not people. This is something you need to take in, because this is why these relationships are entirely impossible. And there's just no healthy reason whatsoever to stay in them or be in them in the first place. And people get into them in the first place. I don't mean to sound judgmental. People get into them in the first place because of your own childhood woundedness, which manifests mostly and is defined mostly as codependency. It could be CPTSD. It could be CPTSD and codependency, etc. But people with BPD don't make you want to be with them. Let me make that clear, maybe, as a step back a bit. Although people say, but and they like seduced me, and then, but at what point does a codependent go, wait a minute, I have responsibility here, and when are you going to say to yourself, what about me, meaning you? How can these borderlines be so damn powerful if you don't give your power away to them, in spite of what it is they do, which they are responsible for? And the commenter continues, and this is exactly what you're dealing with when you deal with someone who has BPD and you love them. Well, partially, yes, but there's more that you're bringing to the circumstance as well. And even though they pull and pull and pull away, definitely, but they push and then they pull. And they push and then they pull. And if they get to the pull, they're sure they're going to be gone soon. But you know what? Codependents are pursuing. So trying to grab and pull back, and the person with BPD is pushing away. And for some reason, this commenter said they pull and pull and pull away. No, they push and push and push away. And people with codependency try and pull and pull and pull them back. Unless they're trying to pull you in. And then you might, if you're trying to get out of this, you might start to push away yourself. But that would be a healthy thing for a codependent to do. So as there, I would say they push and push away, not pull and pull away. But yeah, they're pushing you away to pull away in their own distancing. Yes, okay, defensively. So you keep trying because you have codependency and you have compassion and you want to help and love them. That's not really why codependents keep trying. It's because codependents can't face self yet. And codependents are still externalizing out their repetition compulsion cycle of rescuing other so they can find emotional safety by rescuing other. And then the commenter continues, because even in those sentences, I can see the hurt and the feelings of betrayal and mistrust of everybody and how sad that this person must feel that they can't get close to anyone. Yeah, and that's about as close as you're going to get to fully understanding it as a codependent. Yeah. And the thing about that, and you should feel fortunate about that, by the way. I'm not saying that to put anybody down. And the other thing about that is the person said, I can see the hurt and the feelings of betrayal and mistrust of everybody, and how sad that this person must feel. Must feel. But here's what I like to assert to you again. You don't know what they're feeling. They don't know what they're feeling. You don't know what they're feeling. But how much codependent projection goes into this statement? Goes into a lot of things that people with codependency do in their own right as well. And the codependent says, so you just keep trying to be that person that they can trust and that one person that they can count on. Well, yes, and that is, pardon me, that is a very wounded part of the trauma bond for people with codependency, that they keep trying to be that person. Because where in your childhood were you inculcated that you needed to, in one way or another, to one degree or another, quote, be that person, unquote, for mom or for dad or for uncle or for grandma or for a sibling? Because it isn't always about the borderline or the narcissist. It just isn't. And I'm not negating what they do at all when I make that statement. So people with codependency don't try to keep being the person that borderline or narcissist or borderline in this case could count on. No. You're doing this for all your own reasons. I don't know if this commenter is aware of that yet or not, but are you? Do you want to know more about that yet or not? Because you're feeling your own suffering and pain on the other side of a BPD relationship breakup if you're thinking in what is sort of this all or nothing way of this person with codependency, because they're seeing it all through only one half of the totality of both sides, if I can put it that way. But no matter what you do, you always become the enemy. And then they say things like, you hurt me more than anybody, even more than my family who abused me. When in reality, all you do is keep coming back and trying to be loyal. Yeah, but why, people with codependency? Why? In the face of their complete disregard for your feelings. Yeah. And you're doing that because you have a stake in doing that. They're not making you do that. Let me make that clear. So, not excusing the way that the borderline will treat you, because they have their own repetition compulsion patterns, and not judging the way codependents respond. And then when they say things like, yeah, people with BPD do make you the enemy. That's true. That's very true. And then they say things like what the commenter said here, you've hurt me more than anybody, even more than my family who abused me. Well, okay, and that's not true, and nor should any codependent bear that responsibility or take on those feelings or that blame. But again, see, do you understand why they say these things? I'm not saying it's okay they do. But that was said to this commenter because that person with BPD was experiencing this commenter, her partner, as object other, wounding parent. So you abused me just as bad as they did, which is a statement coming from a borderline, blaming you, which is not okay, it's abusive, blaming you for what happened to them in the family of origin, their primal core woundedness. And that's not okay. But please understand that that's not something you're supposed to pick up when they lay it down. That's what codependent people do. You care so much about what they think about you, anybody, what everybody thinks about you, let alone the borderline, that when they lay down that blame, you pick it up. And I'm not saying that there's anything right about them laying it down. I hope you can hear that. And then the commenter said, I was told that I was, well, he says unloyal, but the word is disloyal. The commenter was told that he was disloyal, and that commenter says, I never actually cared about them. Well, you see, the people with BPD are always going to say this, and I'm not trying to excuse it, right, or make light of it. It's a very, sorry, pun intended, but it's a very heavy and very emotionally damaging thing, and it wounds. But the bottom line is, why do people with codependency so easily pick it up and take it on? That's the question that you have to ask yourselves. Get into a healing recovery process to help yourselves answer these questions instead of still focusing on the borderline. But this person says that they were loyal, and then they're told that they never actually cared about them, even though I've come back time and time again. That's your martyr, victim, rescuer complex, which is yours, commenter, and people with codependency. You do that because you got inculcated in childhood, trained that way, unfortunately, and you need to heal that now. So you kept going back time and time again to be loyal. See, again, there's no altruism here. This is the woundedness of codependency and half of the trauma bond. And yes, people with BPD will say, you never did anything for me, you never cared about me. And I'm not saying that's okay, but they will say these things because this is their experience. Why? Because they don't see you and they don't hear you. And to them, it has not registered when they get into defensive, triggered, dysregulated emotion and splitting, which I'm just explaining, not excusing. But it is reality. And it's the reality that you're going to encounter continually in recycling these relationships and in the trauma bond that goes on and on. With breakup, recycle, on, off, revolving door. Gotta get them back. Whatever in the world for? So I can go through this some more, so I can try harder to change them and fix them. Will they tell me that I never cared or they cheated on me? Don't you see how you have a half in this as a codependent? We're not excusing the borderline part. No, we're not. But I'm trying to say, my educational purpose here is to say to you as a codependent, why are you so focused on their half? What about your part? And not to say it's even or anything like that. Just to say, how are you going to heal? You keep focusing on their part and what they did. And they do this because they don't see you. They don't hear you. They don't take in your love. They don't take in your care and concern. It disappears like that when something hurts. Because they are experiencing you as object of their representation of either good parent never had or wounding parent. Back and forth without re-idealization, just base mode, maybe object other representation of good parent ever had. But they aren't seeing or hearing you. That's why there's no room for your feelings in this trauma bond. And I'm not saying anything about what people with BPD do in relationships is okay, because it isn't. But this is a call to codependence to try to wake up a little and to ask yourself, what are you doing? And especially if you want them back, what about your half of the trauma bond? Are you ready to take responsibility for that yet? Get into your own healing recovery journey so you can free yourself from that. Because it's not all about the borderline. It just isn't. And I'm not trying to negate or excuse what they do at all. Again, please know that. And I'm passionate about this. That's all, And the commenter said, they went back time and time again, and they've said the worst horrifying swearing insults against my appearance, my character, and also other people and things that I love. I want to hear you on that. And that happens, and that hurts. And it's abusive on the part of the person with BPD who doesn't even understand why they're doing it. But yeah, they're responsible for it. But then the question again for codependency is going to be a little hard hitting this for you if you're not ready for this and you're codependent. But why did you keep going back? I'm not just saying to the commenter, to anyone with codependent. Why do you want to go back again? Why do you want the ex back? Why are you pining away? Why do you think like you feel addicted to them? What's going on that you want more of what like hurt like hell? Like what? Excuse me? And this commenter said that borderlines create their own hell and drama. What are you doing as a codependent? I really ask because I care. And because I'm here to keep it real, to help people to heal. I'm not trying to judge. I'm not, playing devil's advocate. We're not excusing the behavior of the borderline. But we're here to say, what about the codependent today? What about your side of the trauma bond that matters to you because you're the one in agony and pain after the breakup? People with BPD deal with it differently, and they don't really deal with it. And then people go, well, that's not fair. And they deserve to know how much they hurt me. Yeah, but like, what about you and you? What about you, the individual codependent, and what are you going to do to help you today? Because that's why I'm here in this video. That's why. I'm not challenging this commenter's experience or how he put things or how he said things at all. This is just like a way to try to teach and reach people that don't want to hear what I'm saying right now, but because you need to hear it if you're still wanting to go back, or still staying with them, or still feeling too guilty to leave them, or you just got to stay in touch with them somehow. All of these things that aren't no contact. Because you don't, and you can't, and you won't break the trauma bond without working with somebody. And this is what people with codependency are unconsciously in repetition compulsion cycles repeating on your side of the trauma bond. And that you can't really blame the borderline for when it's over. Or if it's not over, is it just them that hoovers you? Or do you engage the hoover and you get back into the dynamics of this toxic trauma bonded relationship, or these toxic trauma bonded relationships? I think the answer is you have something to do with it too, but we're not saying that you're doing what the borderline's doing. Okay? Hope you really hear that. And this commenter says, I literally have been the embodiment of blind loyalty, and yet they can't even say that. And I think they meant to say see that, but maybe can't see it or say it, or acknowledge it, or validate it. And I think a lot of people with codependency feel this, and exactly what this commenter is saying. But let me tell you something. If you are a blind and loyal, some of it's unconscious, right, ladies and gentlemen? If you are blind and loyal, the embodiment of loyal, codependent, which you might not know about the codependent part, but if you embody loyalty in the face of abuse and you call it love, then you have to ask yourself, what do you know about love? Why is that the case? That, you've been part of a toxic, trauma-bonded relationship where you might have been really traumatized and abused by that borderline or that narcissist, absolutely. But so this commenter says, I literally have been the embodiment of blind loyalty. But yeah, what? Really? I have empathy for the commenter. I don't mean to be so confrontational. It's probably being a little too confrontational here. Yeah. So if you're a codependent like this person, commenter with codependency, and you've been the embodiment of this blind loyalty, and they don't even get it, they don't see it, and they won't even, well, of course not. And you can't know that in the beginning, right? But your responsibility once you start learning a little bit about BPD, or you might think you know a lot about it, but again, you don't know really what motivates their behavior or how they feel. And I think that matters. But you do get the patterns, and you know how it hurts you, and that's really what I'm here to focus on right now. Not people with BPD, people with codependency who keep trying to blame the borderline for everything, and then want to get back with them too, in more cases than not. Why? Obviously, if that wasn't your part of a trauma bond, if that wasn't something in your past and your woundedness known as codependency, is there some other reason that anybody can give me a comment here to let me know why you want the BPD or the narcissist for that matter, or comorbidity both X back? Why? If you didn't have an unconscious repetition compulsion externalizing out cycle to pursue that, to get rewounded, to get rewounded. You see what I'm saying? This is what you need to go and get some help for. This is what I work with clients to help them heal. So you don't want to go back. So you don't keep going back. So you separate the wiring in your brain, the neuroplasticity of healing and recovery processes, from codependency and from cluster B relationship breakups, so that you don't keep having fused together love and abuse. Because that's the position that people with codependency are in their part of the unconscious trauma bond. Okay? And of course, people with BPD, unfortunately, can't take in what you've done for them. They remember it, but they don't think it important anymore. It's like you are out of sight, out of mind when that split evaluation happens. Period. And I could talk a lot more. Leave a comment below if you want to hear more. Because if you want to hear more about BPD, I think my stance on this channel is, with some exceptions, you're going to have to hear a lot more about you first. Right? A lot more about codependency. And I'm not trying to be smug or stupid. I'm sorry. Maybe my tonality should be different. But I'm just passionate And I feel like it's like, oh, got me energized up, when maybe I should be a little bit speaking to you more calmly. So please excuse that and know that I'm not trying to be confrontational. But I also know how this message will hit some people and how many people won't watch this. So this is an attempt, like I said, to wake up people with codependency, because you're blaming the borderline for everything and then wondering why they're blaming you for everything. But the point is, what you need to know more about is, why do you keep wanting to go back? And why was this person, like this person, so many people with codependency, I'm not trying to single out this commenter at all, doing this with much respect to this commenter. People with codependency, I guess maybe I should phrase it this way. So you've been really loyal, you've tried hard to love them, because you're trying to repair something unconsciously from your own childhood, which goes back to mom or dad or somebody in your family of origin. It's not really all about the borderline that you want to rescue and fix. It isn't, but people think it is. And so more to the point then, you're abandoning yourself, and that wounded, abandoned to some degree or other, inner child in each codependent, that's who's really waiting for your rescue. Not the borderline. They're not interested. They don't want to be fixed. They don't want to be rescued. And if they did, why wouldn't they go to therapy? And that's not even about fixing and rescuing. So I forgot what else I was going to say there. Sorry. And then the commenter continues, it's not that they can't admit it. It's that they literally can't see it. Right. And at the same time that you're absolutely right about that commenter, and anybody with codependency that, relates to this commenter, it's not that they can't admit it, it's that they literally can't see it. Right. And when you know that, how come you're not working with somebody out here in coaching, therapy, whatever you want to call it? I do either, both, whatever. It's mostly coaching when it's outside the province of Ontario, but still, whatever it is, right? The process. And I've been doing 33 years to help people heal and recover from codependency and cluster B relationship breakups, family of origin issues, etc. It's not that they can't admit it. It's not that the borderline can't admit it. It's that they literally can't even see it. Right. And people with codependency couldn't be wounded with codependency if there wasn't something in your childhood that happened to one degree, various degrees, or others degrees, severe degrees or other degrees, where you weren't seen or heard and a parent didn't get it. Didn't even see something that hurt you so bad. As this does with people with the borderlines. I get it. But that's what people with codependency need to think about too, and adopt as a mantra, because when you're giving and giving and giving, and you're there as the embodiment of loyalty, and you're with a borderline, and now you know that, or a narcissist, please know that all your good deeds are not going to go unpunished, period. Because they're not trusted by people with BP or NPD. They're not taken in by people with BP or NPD. They're not experienced from you as what you're actually giving by people with BP or NPD. And as soon as you know that, then when you want them back, or you're recycling with them, or you're still in that relationship, or you're 24/7 focused on them, it's all about them, blame them, what they did to you, yes, they traumatized you, they hurt you, they triggered your codependency if you didn't know about it before, they re-wounded you, it's terrible, it is terrible. But you want to live in that space still, or do you want to heal? And do you want to move beyond that? Because that's where you have to stop the focus on the borderline, to start learning how to focus on you. And that is a scary proposition for a lot of people with codependency, because codependency is really formidable. And though I healed and recovered from BPD, and I was sexually abused as a child, and physically abused, and gaslit, and a lot of trauma, okay? And I healed all of that, and I went forward. And then even after all that work in therapy for 15 years of my life, I would then go on and, I would be in a couple of cool relationships, date, that was great. And then I would end up with a borderline narcissist alcoholic. Well, how would that happen? Because I was still a codependent. So what am I trying to say here? Because I'm not trying to compare things, right? But I'm trying to say codependency is that formidable, People in codependency are very unconsciously unaware of a lot of what's going on for you that drives you to do things that keep you in the orbit of that borderline or narcissist, keep you in the orbit of the abuse that you keep on thinking is going to yield you some love somehow. You have to take responsibility for that if you have codependency, if you really want to get into a healing recovery process and not just keep spinning your wheels and suffering because you can't stop focusing on them. Because what about you? And so what I wanted to say about my history was, after I healed BPD, and yeah, lots of people think my claim is crazy, but no, I was told this. I didn't make it up. I didn't say I, quote, cured myself like the Reddit threads and all that crap out there. There's so much mythology written about me. You don't know me personally. So why don't you just, as I'm trying to help you, okay, suspend your disbelief should you have that challenge, that you think nobody can recover from BPD, because that's so trite and ridiculous. Let me just say straight up, it is. You know, I've seen very few people, pardon me for a minute if this isn't humble enough, I've seen very few people online that actually know what I know about BPD and codependency and how to heal and recover from these things. I'm not saying I'm the only one that knows anything about it or how to help people, but in the way that I do it. Now, I have found somebody else online. I think they're a person that writes in a certain area, and they seem like they almost kind of get what I get. And I know there are other people out there that do, because I'm not saying it's just me. No, it's not. And I'm not comparing myself to Marsha Linehan by any means. But she had BPD, and most people, say, or are fine with accepting that she recovered from it, okay? So this notion that only Marsha Linehan and nobody else, give me a break. And number two, I know I've healed and recovered from it, whether you agree or not. So that's cool. But I'm just saying this for a reason, okay? Because it's where I might bring up more that can help people understand BPD from my own experience, or maybe I won't, because it's a boundary, and I don't know what I want to do with that. But whether you believe in my recovery or not matters not, because what I'm here to tell you is, after healing and recovering from sexual abuse, physical abuse, a whole bunch of other stuff, cult abuse, with two narcissistic parents with comorbidities, mother BPD, covert narcissist, mainly covert narcissist, strongly. My father was a dark triad. And after all that work of 15 years worth of recovery, I still would need to do a lot of healing and recovery work to not be a codependent anymore. So that's what I want you to really hear and understand before my dog loses his, hey, quiet, because I'm almost done here. And so the commenter continues, they can't see or hear you no matter how much you try. Toby! No matter how much you try, no matter how visible you try to be, or no matter how clearly you try to speak. Very true, commenter, very right on. And guess what? Are you still focusing on that? Because a lot of people out there are. Are you somebody who's still focusing on that? Are you still not able to let go? Are you still ruminating and wanting them back, even though this statement is really super true? People with BPD, they don't see you. No matter how much you try, no matter how visible you try to be, or no matter how clearly you try to speak. Right? Because they don't have a self. They don't know the difference between self and others. This is explanation, not excusing their behavior. And this plays right into the externalized out repetition compulsion patterns in codependency. This is why you come together like magnets in a toxic trauma bond. And I have a lot of empathy for what people with codependency experience there, obviously, of course. But I also have empathy for the borderline because I understand what they're going through too. But I'm not here to spill that on you, so to speak. So the commenter said of that podcast episode that it encapsulated literally so many struggles that the commenter thinks, quote, all of us, meaning all of you, have had with our BPD loved one, which is probably a very true statement. So I have something else I've done, and I want to know if you want to know more about the other side, right? What's happening with the borderline. But because I've written out something that was more, not emotional, it wasn't emotional for me, but it was like a way of explaining the emotionality of what's happening for borderlines as you're experiencing what this commenter has put in this comment. as codependents, but without really ever, pardon me for making such a bold, wide, sweeping statement, you will never understand totally why a borderline does, or why a narcissist does what they do, and how and what motivates it when. Because the codependent world, emotionally speaking, and the borderline or narcissist world, and each of those two, even separate from each other, are separate worlds. They're separate emotional worlds of emotional realities. But at the same time, I want to remind you that people with BPD, when they are assessed and diagnosed with BPD, part of that process is there's also a measurement scale and a testing for reality testing. And so people, with codependency are saying, oh, these borderlines, they don't know what reality is, and they're in their own reality. And to a degree, emotionally, yes, of course, they are in a lost place. And they cannot relate to you. And they are not relationship material, and you should not be anywhere near them. And they need help, and people with codependency need to heal too. But the thing is, with that, I forgot what I was saying now. People with BPD are presenting every day to people with codependency relational impossibility, communication impossibility. And though you are wounded to a degree with codependency, you can communicate. You can ask questions. You want to have that connection, right? People with BPD want the connection too, but have no ability. So the emotionality, the emotional different worlds, it's like worlds collide in toxic trauma bonds. There's really hardly any sort of, quote, miracles out there that no matter how long people keep colliding and bashing in these trauma bonds with a borderline or narcissist, that you're somehow going to change or fix them, because no, you're just not going to do it. So then why is it that so many people with codependency after the relationship are 24/7 focused on them? Because people with codependency literally don't know how to focus on themselves emotionally. They don't know how to, you're not necessarily aware of all that I'm sort of putting out here for you to think about and maybe embrace awareness around if you haven't already. You're not really aware of what's going on for you and where that comes from in your family of origin and why you have codependency and what all that really means if you're still thinking it was all the borderline, right? And it isn't that dicey to say, kind of, And so I think that the podcast episode I did, which again has a different title on the podcast, but the commenter said it literally encapsulates so many of the struggles that this commenter thinks all people with codependency experience at the BPD level, in which I would agree there's commonality in the themes of that experience. And so this was comment left on borderline deficits, 7 signs you're relating to a borderline. And also what it was called in my podcast was borderline emotional and communication deficits, 7 signs you're relating to a borderline. So I think that I might have sounded worked up here, but I'm just passionate. And maybe it's not the best way to try to reach out to people with codependency. But my mantra here and my mission and my purpose on this side of the fence is to try to wake up people with codependency to realize that you're obsessive, your rumination, your trauma bonded, still influenced focus and rumination and longing and just wanting them back, to do over, the try over, the revolving door situation, all of that. It's not all about the borderline or the narcissist. And that can be devastating for people with codependency to hear, if you even have listened this far. Or not only hear, but go, oh, and start to feel what that might feel like, because it's painful. It's really, really painful when you start to focus on your own emotional landscape. And what do you need help with there? And what do you need to heal there? So pardon me if I got passionate. Pardon me if it sounded confrontational. It's not at all my intention. But I was aware that, with the cold and the raspy voice and everything, I just thought, ooh, this might be sounding a little bit more charged than I intended. So if it did, my apologies. But I am really super passionate about helping people with codependency to get to the kind of awareness that will help you so much to work with someone. I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you, but whoever you choose to work with, be careful, choose wisely. Point being, because you need to find someone that you can trust and work with to open up to what you've been protecting for your lifetime up to this point, however old you are. That right now, when people get in relationships and the trauma bonds with borderlines or narcissists, you can't know at the time, and you might not even understand or realize or know this yet, and you might think, what the hell is she talking about now? Remember that codependency is not called codependent personality disorder and is not a diagnosis in the DSM, because when it was proposed as codependent personality disorder to, I believe, DSM, I'm not sure if it was 4, but in the mid-1980s, whatever version, the reason that the American Psychiatric Association, who I don't respect and think much of and don't believe half of their studies, big pharma funded, hegemony and all of that nonsense, but here, did they do something wise or did they miss the boat? I don't know. Because codependency is as formidable as borderline personality is in its own way. So separating them out. But the reason the APA said that they didn't put codependent personality disorder in the DSM, which might make sense or no sense, I don't know anymore. I just don't agree with the pathologizing of everybody, including all the pathologizing of people with BPD, but that's not for right now. They said that codependency overlaps too much with borderline personality disorder and cluster C's dependent personality disorder for it to be its own personality disorder. So what am I saying to you actually here now? That your codependency is as formidable a woundedness in its own right as borderline personality for those diagnosed with it who have that more primal and, yes, different woundedness, different behavior, different emotional reality, etc. They live in a different emotional world, and it's a world of hell. And I don't know why so many people don't want to get help to get out of that. So you are as wounded as a codependent with as much a formidable kind of extremely painful trauma bond to one degree or another that you will get into the relationship with a borderline or a narcissist, or many people have had different relationships with borderlines and narcissists over the course of their life so far. Because codependency, just because it's sometimes dismissed online, talked about as if it's only, quote, an attachment style, which it isn't. And this attachment style or that attachment style or the other attachment style doesn't negate the reality and existence of what codependency really is and means, and that codependency is also a trauma response. Now, is that going to be abject capital T trauma in the history of every codependent? No. But it's still going to be woundedness that as codependents you grow up, and you, in a different way than what borderlines do with all their issues and problems and troubles, which are, yes, in some ways much more formidable, but in other ways they commingle with the traits of codependency. And what people with codependency are kind of experiencing in a different way, with some core similarity in a different way, especially in severe codependency. But the reality with this is that the manifestation, let's say it's somebody has codependency severely, the manifestation of that codependency from the trauma in childhood which created that codependency is going to be about this far away from you being codependent versus borderline or narcissist, okay? This far, not far. And what does that mean? Well, in all my years of experience, what I see, and I had BPD and I healed and recovered, and then I had to do the work to get rid of the codependency, to move beyond it. All that therapy for 15 years didn't touch the codependency. That's what I'm trying to say. Codependency is formidable in its own right, and it has, at least when I work with clients, I have a methodology and modality of working with people to help them heal that is specifically geared for people with codependency. Unlike what is it like to work with somebody with BPD? What is it like to work with a covert, vulnerable, fragile person with narcissistic personality, etc.? So it's that formidable. And I say that because until and unless, and if you have moderate codependency, it'll be different. If you have it significantly, you're almost to where I'm talking about with people with it severely. So the thing is it a good thing that it's not codependent personality disorder on its own? Versus that, what I'm saying right now is it's so related and overlapping with borderline personality and dependent personality. But with borderline personality, that what am I really meaning as I'm saying this? What I really mean is it's not exactly the same, but the overlap factor means that the trauma bond fit seems perfect in the good, and extremely sort of fittingly horrible in the trauma and the bad and the painful part of it all, the devastating part of it all for people with codependency, because you are, with codependency, experiencing a trauma bond relationship. You are coming from a place of woundedness to varying degrees that is so similar to where the borderline is coming from. Not the same, similar, but without certain aspects of that primal core woundedness. That is essentially what defines BPD. And then in a different framework also defines NPD. But people with codependency are coming from a similar core woundedness, or not a similar core woundedness, a similar kind of woundedness to varying degrees, different from BPD, that sees you having your own externalizing out repetition compulsion cycles of pursuing someone else and not consciously being aware of what you're doing, and that you're not getting anything back. Why do you keep giving and giving and giving? Because it's the opposite manifestation, in essence, of borderline personality disorder. So you see, there's core similarities to a degree, not entirely, especially with people with more severe codependency. Because what you're doing is you're giving, trying to please, worrying what people think about you in the borderline, and the narcissist in their own right. What they're doing is, can't hear you, can't see you, don't care about you, whatever, just like, gimme, I need. I heard, I got, it's empty in here, it's empty. Help. And you're like, I'll help. And they're going, help. And of course, then the way it plays out in the trauma bond, and in that, really complex, complicated, traumatizing, one way, each way, borderline narcissists, gimme, take. Well, they think they love you so much, right? They're using you. They lack identity. They're not exactly the same borderline as narcissists, but they have an overlap of sorts in the middle, too. So what I'm really trying to get across here is that codependency, the best way that I can put it from all my years of experience, and as somebody who had it as well, and it seemed a little bit harder for me to recover from codependency than BPD. Just, I'm not sure how to measure that, really. But that's what I'm going to say for this moment in time. That has some truism, of course, or I wouldn't say it. It has some realism to my experience in recovery from different things, way ages ago. Codependency, though, really, I was still grappling with that up until, majorly, until maybe 2008, 9, 10, somewhere in there, in ways that, kept confounding me that there was something else more still there to work on. And the relationship that I had with the BPD, NPD alcoholic in the end of 2003 through 2004 into 2005, and then I broke up with her, and we still had contact into 2006 because, trying to be in the friend zone, which is not only a, quote, lesbian thing, as I happen to be a lesbian, but it's also often a codependent thing. And that was so wounding on top of the relationship. And I only bring that up again here to say that there's so much more I'd like to share, but I get the feeling people don't want to hear, or they think I'm focusing on myself too much, or it's boring. But I know exactly how you feel out there, ladies and gentlemen, with your codependency and the borderline or the narcissist, and you can't, and this, and I want to go back and recycle, because I did that. Because I need to probably do a video on this separately. I don't know if anybody cares, but they're not the best watched videos. I'm just saying, I don't know why. But when I had the codependency and I was no longer a borderline or anything, and I was in that relationship with the BPD, NPD, we had 2 or 3 on and offs, and Hoovers. I was just thinking about this the other day. I got hoovered successfully by that borderline narcissist alcoholic. I'll have to think about it now, 2 or 3 times. So the relationship was off, and then I started to move forward, and boom, she was back hoovering, and I engaged it, and then I went back in there. And then that would happen 3 times. And then I had a different experience some years ago with a different person I was in a relationship with who wasn't a cluster B or anything. It wasn't a horribly unhealthy relationship. It's a long story. But man, I think back now and I realize that in that particular time, in the late 1990s, I had a limerent experience. And that's interesting that I want to pursue that more and think about that more. And if you're interested, let me know, because if you don't let me know, it means you're not interested. I'm not going to talk about it, okay? This channel needs some more engagement, ladies and gentlemen, so I know what you want to hear more about and whether or not anything that I actually know first person matters to you or not. And I'm being serious. I'm not like, oh, woe is me if you don't want to hear it. I only want to offer it to help you, right? But like, I don't want to offer it if it's not going to be helpful. But so I had a limerent experience. And I know what it was like. I was just focused on this person because it was a long distance kind of start of a relationship. And it was the first time I was really going to be wide open to love. And it was the first love of my life. And having recovered from BPD, I didn't have any experience. So I was in my early 30s. And I didn't have an experience with all these feelings at all. So maybe that's what caused the limerence for me. But I remember walking my dog, sitting outside, having communication with this person. Well, maybe I was in my mid-30s, because I guess it was late 90s, so I should say I was in my mid to late 30s. I can't remember numbers anymore. They go by so quick. So anyway, that limerent experience, I remember walking my dog, sitting outside, being with other people, whatever I was doing. I was like, I couldn't stop focusing on this person that, yes, I was in contact with, and yes, we were not in a relationship at the point, but so much communication on the phone and through email. And that was before a lot of the ways that people can communicate around the world now existed. And the point was that just 24/7 was thinking about it. So there was a possibility of me being with this person, but it didn't seem like it in the beginning for many reasons. I'm not going to bore you with that right now. But the bottom line is, please understand that everything I'm saying in these videos, is no claim to fame. But I have the inside scoop and the inside experience of what I'm talking about and describing about people with borderline personality, the core of it. Didn't have all the traits, didn't have it severely. I was really lucky and blessed that way. But then I had all the codependency as well. And then I, too, like you, had a relationship with a cluster B, and I'm talking mostly about the BPD, NPD, alcoholic one, because I think it's more relatable. So I hope you can hear me when I say I'm working really hard for you to hear me here, that you'll want to get into a healing recovery journey for yourself as a person with codependency. So stop this recycling. Stop focusing on the borderline. Stop worrying about what they didn't see, what they blamed you for. I mean, you're going to have to work through all of that. But hey, what about you? What about you? You matter, and you have worth, and you're not even living through that or in that when you're always thinking about and focusing on the freaking cluster B. And I walked in your shoes. I understand. I shouldn't do that. It sounds like a banging noise on I'm sorry. I'm just really passionate here to want to say way too much at once, I think. This is probably way too long. But I really want you to know, it's not just that I have an education, blah, blah, bloody all that I don't even really focus on. I don't bring anything to the table and hang it behind me and show you. It's not really where I'm coming from, right? As I'm too down to earth and want to vertically relate to you, especially my clients, and have that be, a coaching relationship that we work together, but not like we're not working on me, but that I work together with clients in to help them heal, and not vertical relating. Like a lot of therapy, a lot of coaching people, they're into this sort of like, well, I know it all and you're down there. And that's not what I meant at all back earlier in this video. When I'm saying you really just don't know, because you really just don't know what's really motivating that borderline and why they really do what they do. I mean, there are people out there that can give you a lot to think about that. And a lot of that's going to be misinformation, number one. And number two, a lot more of it's going to be what you can absorb intellectually, but you're never going to know how it feels. And therefore, for the grace of God, go you. Accept that codependency in its own way in its own right is almost as formidable as borderline personality disorder in its own way for what it is. I'm not saying it is borderline personality disorder. And then I hope you can hear what I said, because I'm going to say it one more time, because I think about these things. I don't usually share them. I share them sometimes with clients and a lot more when it's appropriate, when it's helpful to a client. But I think to myself, it's called use of self. I think to myself, what does it really mean in what I experienced when I went through that whole healing and recovery journey from, in therapy from BPD, which was the label. I was never assessed. Let me remind you, I'm not trying to walk anything back I've ever said. I could explain that in a video one day. All the things that I didn't do that are typical for borderlines to do. And then the 4 traits that I really had. Bottom line, doesn't matter now. Don't have that anymore. And that's true, whether you believe it or not. But here's what I'm here to say. What does it mean to you, if anything, if you listen to me, if you care about what I'm saying? What does it mean that I'm here to tell you, as somebody that went through healing, if not full BPD, like I didn't have 9 traits. I would say max I would have had 5. But I wasn't ever assessed, so I don't know if I had 5 or 4. I know I had 4. Okay? I just know in retrospect I had 4. Strong traits of BPD. Which isn't enough to fit the diagnosis, by the way. Just saying. Whatever. I don't fit it now anyway. I don't fit anything. No, bad fat joke. Sorry. My point is this, to end here, finally. If you lasted this long, God bless you. And I hope it helps you. What do you take away from my sharing my truth and experience with you? That I healed and recovered the degree to which I had borderline personality disorder. And that I still had codependency. And that when I think back on, there were aspects of the BPD labelish recovery that I needed to go through. I had that trauma to heal. That were probably much tougher than healing from codependency. But overall, it's hard for me to quantify the difference. And so why do I mention that now? I mention it to say to you that that's how formidable codependency is. Obviously, if you have it moderately, and I have worked with many clients who do have codependency moderately, that's a little bit different. But for people that have it significantly or severely, codependency, I would say I had codependency severely. And now I would say what you're experiencing with me on this channel, if you resonate with me, because many people come to the channel and don't, and I see people that pop by and comment, and then I see where their favorite channels are. That's all cool. I just sometimes wonder, why do they hear that and they don't want to, but hey, that's neither here nor there. My point is that, if I resonate with you, I think the entirety of my life experience really matters much more than my education, and that I've walked in your shoes. And this, as I try to measure my journey through recovery from all my childhood trauma, the sexual abuse, the cult abuse, the narcissistic abuse, etc., and the label of BPD, and significantly for those traits primarily, which is not BPD light, by the way. Just means I don't have an addictive personality. I never took psych meds. I never drank. I don't have a drinking problem. I don't have a drug problem. Don't have a criminal history. None of that stuff. And so I never wanted to take my own life. None of that stuff. So there's a lot of atypical things that are true about me, that always were true about me, even though I got labeled with BPD and had this trauma to heal and recover from, and did go through that most formidable 15 years of work to be an averagely healthy individual. But I still had severe codependency at the end of that process. And this is why I advocate so strongly in my little sphere of people that resonate with me on this channel or podcast that I do, that codependency needs is somebody who's not only been there. You need to work with somebody who's not only been there, but somebody who knows, like who's walked in your shoes like I have. And that's just a really key core thing, because a lot of just mental health clinicians out there who don't have this life experience, they really don't get it at all. And then I've seen a lot of them out there that do videos and say incredibly codependent things while they're doing them. But Like I'd love to help people heal from their, I mean, I'm passionate and it's my mission and purpose and it's what I'm all about. But would I say I love it? I think that would be going one step too far. I don't dislike it. I'm very passionate about helping people heal and recover. So anyway, this has become now this like really long thing. And maybe, I go on too much, muddy the waters, try to say too much in one video for sure sometimes. But I hope you can really hear where I'm coming from. And I hope you can really try to pick up pieces of what I'm actually laying down, because I don't think it's, quote, special what I'm saying. But I do have a kind of, somewhat unique, not just me, only me, but some kind of unique understanding of this whole area because of what I have been through and what I have healed and recovered. And I was just going to say one last thing here, and I don't mean to reference my size or whatever, as we hope that the trolls will get bored because I don't give a shit. You know what I'm saying? Bottom line is that, again, I only say this because what kind of big role model am I trying to say I am when I am this heavy because I have a medical condition, etc.? No, I'm not trying to say that. What I'm trying to say, though, is I show up on this camera, no matter what people are saying, because I don't care what they're saying about me, or how fat I am, or I'm a whale, or I'm, all those. I don't care. And why do I say that to you at the end of this video? Because wouldn't you like to get to the place, no matter if you're very thin and very handsome, very beautiful in your own right, whatever the case, and you're not heavy or, like I am or whatever right now. But the thing is, wouldn't you like to get to a place that no matter how you look, who you are, what you like, what you don't like, what you think, what you want to do with the rest of your life, what are your dreams and your goals for the rest of your life, that you don't have to worry about what people think about you or say about you? Because to me, this is part of my testament of, or testimony of, recovery from codependency. Because when I had codependency, no way could I sit here right now just, being as I am, which I'm fine with because I radically accept. I mean, it sucks, but, it is what it is. And the bottom line is working on it, etc. But the thing is, I have to accept it right now. I am the size that I am because it is what is. And so in the radical acceptance of that, I'm not saying it's horrible to be this heavy or it's great to be this heavy. This is me right now, and I am this size. And I'm not trying to talk about that for the sake of it. I'm just trying to tell you how, if I had BPD, how, if I was a codependent, would I be able to do this? And I'm not saying, oh, yay me, look at what I can do. No, I'm just trying to really drive home a point. That you too can, it's about my empowerment, actually. It's not about my size. It's about my empowerment as an individuated, relatively healthy individual who has overcome all that I had. Well, this medical thing I haven't overcome. But I've overcome all of those other, emotional, mental health challenges and significant psychological issues. And not to be perfect, I'm not saying that. But the bottom line is, I've added messages to many videos wherein, because, how do you deal with it? I don't want to talk directly about it. Bottom line is, though, I don't want anybody, I should have said this at the beginning of this video, maybe I should do a video on it just really quick, especially, to make this point, because I think people are feeling uncomfortable on my channel when, what's happening on that negative side from those, troll people. And by the way, I could delete, and it's like whack-a-mole. Okay, so that's why there's that too. And then there's the other reality of, I simply don't care. I don't care. And that is a really empowered place to be. And maybe not for the same reason, and it's not the only way that I'm empowered. Oh, wow, I'm fat and people can call me a whale and it doesn't bother me. No. It's the general empowerment that I don't care what other people think about me. I care what my partner thinks. I care what my friends think, yes. But I don't care what people that I don't know think, right? I mean, what's the point in that? But guess what? That's at the core and the heart of codependency. That people can't let go of that concern and worry and guilt and all these feelings of, but what if they don't like me? But what if they don't see me? But what if they don't hear me? Or in my case, I could say, what if they see me? Oh my God, look, I'm this big right now. Blah, blah, blah. What are people going to think? I already know what they think. You know, I step out into the real world, never mind online. In the real world, they're as fatphobic and ridiculous as they are online. They just use different words and stuff. And they don't have emoticons to throw at you, or emojis or whatever they're called. But or little whales. But the thing is, step out into the real world, and I'm sure this is why people are so self-conscious with codependency. Because there's always going to be somebody to judge you about whatever it is that they think is going to hurt you the most. Do you know how freeing it is to not be hurt at all by what people think is going to hurt you the most? That's all I'm really trying to say. I'm just using this body of mine right now as a tacit example. That's all. No more, no less. So the bottom line is, are you ready yet to stop blaming the borderline for blaming you for everything that they did to you? Because that's what they do. But you're blaming them too. How are you going to get to breaking the trauma bond if you're still engaging in it? Which is the codependent externalizing out of, but they did this, but they did that, but I need them back, but I want them back. They abused me, they treated me like shit, but I still love them, and I want them back. And I'm not making fun of anybody, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic. I am serious. And why do I say it like that? Because think about it like that for a minute. What are you doing? Ask yourself, what am I doing? How can I want this person back that just abused me and treated me like shit, but I love them? It's hanging on to that. Oh, those good feelings in the beginning, and I gotta get that. And you're not gonna get it back. You're not. No matter how many times you cycle the relationship, you're not. And wherein I was saying about this commenter's comment and what he shared, I hold that dear. I respect that. I really do. And so I didn't mean any antagonistic anything to the commenter. I hope the commenter understands that I use the comment as an educative tool, and I mean no disrespect to the commenter. But it is, I mean no disrespect by saying this, it's a classic example of the codependent narrative. And on this channel, a lot, I'm talking about the borderline narrative. I could talk about the narcissist narrative, etc. But we need to talk more about the codependent narrative, because it's funny, I've been focusing a lot on BPD, and maybe there'll be some NPD stuff, but the codependency, and I have this podcast for that now, and I haven't done enough for it yet. And I'm like, I don't know if I should talk about codependency here because, separately from how I commingle these subjects in the videos or whatever, because I'm like, people don't really, it's not all about views. Obviously, my channel doesn't get that many. I mean, it does well across the channel, but it's not like, I'm not going to ever be a huge view channel. Whatever, that's okay. But because it's who resonates with me, I can only help those I can reach that resonate, right? But the bottom line is, so across this channel, I'm like thinking about explaining BPD some more and helping people, and then intermingling the codependency like I did in this video and whatnot. But I guess it's more about codependency than it is about BPD, but it's a little bit of both, or I don't know. Bottom line is, though, then the other day when I put up the codependency podcast, I thought to myself, well, yeah, but of course, but did you look at the channel name lately? BPD Recovery. No, sorry, BPD Breakups and Codependency Recovery. I'm like, yeah, I think I need to go harder on that second part of the channel name, which is not information that people are like, some people are right there and ready, and some people are so not right there and ready. And many people view this channel, and I can tell from comments, there's lots of people that aren't ready to hear this video. So anyway, I can't see from here, but I'm sorry for the length. If you made it to the end of this, congratulations. And I'm just passionate about this, and I hope that this entirety of the video hangs together and that you can take away what I hope might be the most salient, important points if you're even struggling to put up with hearing this, because it's very difficult for you. Because it probably will be too difficult for many people with codependency right now. And there are a lot of people that I'm working with as clients and have been, not just now, but over the course of time, who tell me when they come to work with me, I was on your channel 5 years ago. I was listening to you 3 years ago, a year ago, 6 months ago. And I just was like, and they left. And then, but they end up coming back, and I'm not saying everybody does, but they come back, and then they want to work with me because it's all about wherever you're at right now, right? So you might be ready for this message and you might not be. And I apologize to anybody who's kind of like, what? And or probably people bailed early. I'm sorry for the length. I'm so passionate. I have so many more things I want to share in depth and put out there, but I'm not sure about this channel versus doing maybe some, not a whole lot of money or for the sake of the money, but paid kind of in-depth. I can go so much deeper about explaining BPD to you than even the over 1,000 videos, hundreds and hundreds of them that explain this aspect or that aspect of BPD. And there's something I have coming that I think will be at ajmahari.com on the online store as a, let me know in the comments if you prefer ebooks, audio, or video. I don't know that I would be in the video if I do video. It's probably going to be audio and or ebooks. But I want to do a deep dive on something that will answer all your questions about why are people with BPD not only in that victim mentality they're in, there's also a codependent mentality. Remember that, ladies and gentlemen. Why are people with BPD in their victim mentality? And why does that color so much? And then why can't they see beyond that lack of self? Why can't they see you and hear you? I have the most in-depth explanation, besides the leading pioneer clinicians that paved the way for me to understand this, and my lived experience of it, that I was in that place. I was somebody who had, quote, BPD or labeled or whatever, but that. And I know what it's like. I remember what it was like when all I did was focus on me, when I didn't understand it back then. But I can look back now and go, oh my God, and just think about times when I didn't have a clue how I affected other people or how much I was thinking only about myself and what was driving that and why. I'm going to go into deep dives on BPD rage, deep dives on that. Why are they so focused on themselves? It's the same for narcissists in a lot of ways too. What is that really about? What are they doing? What's motivating that? Because it is not the surface content that you all experience. Yes, to a degree, what you're learning intellectually about it, not in all places, but many places on the internet, yeah, it's applicable. But here's the other thing. You don't, as a codependent, want to take on the in-depth emotional feeling or understanding of what people with BPD or NPD are going through. You don't. Because if you could ever really take it in and absorb it, then how would you let it go? Anyway, I've said way too much here. I hope that this helps somebody, and take care.